1 o'clock, but everyone is here, I believe, so we'll get started. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this August 21st, 2023 meeting of the Town of Keel Island Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm Frank Cassidy. I'm the chairman of the board. And the board members here today who will hear your case are Larry Rosenfeld, Lynn O'Leary, Morris Hannon, Ben Farabee, Phil Adams, and virtually we got Jay Lewis, who you can see up there on the TV. Our staff members here are John Taylor, our planning director, and Daniel Vincent, our planner, and Joe Wilson is the attorney for the BZA. Our case rulings from this and any BZA meeting are available for public review and inspection during normal business hours at the town hall. We are conducting this meeting virtually, both for Jay and it's live on the web. So I would ask that if you want to speak, raise your hands and I'll recognize you so that we don't have any speaking over each other. I'd ask the members of the public who are here today if you're generally familiar with the procedures of the BZA. If everyone is familiar, I'll skip the comprehensive explanation. Anybody want to hear the comprehensive explanation?
I'm kind of new to this. If I just can get a short overview on exactly how it's going on, I'm representing the homeowner, so I don't know exactly your procedure. So,
would you like me to go through it?
Just a short overview.
It's not that much.
Yeah, okay.
The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body established to interpret and grant relief from the zoning ordinance. The Board of Zoning Appeals has jurisdiction over three types of cases: appeals, variances, and special exceptions. Appeals are heard regarding administrative actions or decisions by the zoning administrators or staff. Variances may be granted when strict application of the zoning ordinance would cause an unnecessary hardship. This board's actions must be based on specific standards, which you'll hear about today, and are contained in SC Local Government Planning Enabling Act of 1994 and the Town of Keel Island zoning ordinance. Special exceptions allow the board to permit uses if certain conditions as contained in the zoning ordinance are met. A simple majority vote of the quorum present, and we have the entire board here today, is required to grant a variance or to overturn the decision of the zoning administrator in an appeal or to grant a special exception. Because today's hearing is a public fact-finding meeting, we are in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and SC Code 6-29-70. 15 days prior to this hearing, an announcement was printed in the Post and Courier, a sign was posted on or near the designated property, and a notice was mailed to the applicant or representative and to residents within 500 feet of the application and to parties of interest. The Town of Keel also announces all these meetings in their weekly email. Persons, organizations, and the news media that have requested declaration of our meeting have also been notified. The Freedom of Information Act does not require notification of anyone other than the applicant and the parties of interest. Our purpose today is for interested parties to be heard in order to assist the board in gathering evidence pertinent to each case. If the members of the BZA feel the need for further information to clarify a case, the board has the authority to subpoena witnesses. In addition to your testimony, our board has been presented written information submitted by the staff by the applicant or their agent in each case. This information is now considered to be evidence and is entered into the permanent record of this body. It's assumed that this is complete, true, and accurate, and also we have been presented data assembled by the staff for the purpose of clarifying the location and the effect on surrounding property. Our board is empowered to approve with conditions, or deny requests. In granting a variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building, structure, or use as the board may consider advisable to protect established property value in the surrounding area or to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. We are also authorized to defer a case should there be a need to attain additional information. If an applicant's request is approved for a special exception, a variance, or an appeal of a decision by the zoning administrator, they must go to the town of Kiowa to apply for permits. Variances and special exceptions granted by the BZA are valid for 12 months after this meeting. However, if the applicant's request is disapproved and they wish to appeal the decision of this board concerning the case, appeals must be addressed to the circuit court. SC 6-29-820 states that the appeal must be filed by the applicant within 30 days after the decision of the board is mailed to them. Failure to file an appeal within the time deprives the court of the jurisdiction to hear this matter. As I mentioned earlier, this is a public fact-finding meeting, and this is a quasi-judicial body, so everything said in the meeting must be complete, true, and accurate. It's all considered evidence, and this board may certify contempt of circuit court if false statements are made. Because of this, anyone who is going to want to speak today with regard to any of the three cases needs to be sworn in. So I would ask, if you intend to speak today, that you stand, and John will, Joe will swear you in. Okay? Sure.
I'm reading a letter in behalf of the homeowner, so is that considered to be sworn in, or?
Yeah, I think so.
If you could, that would be great. You raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'd now like to call case BZA 23-000005 at 96 Belmead Hall. Staff will present facts pertinent to the case, and I'll then call the applicant to address the case. I'd ask the applicant to please stand at the podium, state their name and current address for the record before presenting testimony. I then ask those who are going to speak about the case to do the same thing. Go to the podium, state your name and address. And if you raise your hands, I'll recognize you in order. The applicant will then have an opportunity for rebuttal. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to John Taylor. John?
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Members of the BZA, our first case this afternoon is case BZA 23-000005. This is a variance request for the reduction of the required 10-foot rear setback for approximately 12 square feet of encroachment, 28 square feet encroachment for a proposed deck. The subject property is 96 Belmead Hall, TMS number 207-05-00102. The applicant and property owner, Amy and Brian Hyatt, is being represented by Mr. Martin Lechler. Subject property is zoned in our R20 residential overlay zoning district and is approximately 5,506 square feet in size. Our ordinance outlines the setbacks for the subject property as follows: a 15-foot front, 15-foot side, and 10-foot rear. And there's a 50% lot coverage for the subject property. Here is the subject property at Belmead Hall. Belmead Hall is located within Inlet Cove neighborhood along Beachwalker Drive. There's an area of the subject property and a few images of the site. The proposed plans that have been submitted include the proposal of a deck modification where this existing home as a patio lot sits adjacent to critical area at the rear, march to the south. Properties to the both north, east, and west are also located in R20's Overlay Zoning District. And this subject property is under the purview or is reviewed by the Kiawah Island Architectural Review Board. As you can see here in the site plan, the proposed area of modification is located adjacent to the critical area at the rear of the home. And so the proposed plans, include approximately 127 square feet of a deck that is existing, and approximately 97 square feet of that is to be added. Approximately 28 square feet is the area of request today, which sits beyond the allowable staff approved area for an open deck. And so that proposed lot coverage totals approximately 48.51%. The area that's in question sits beyond that yellow line that's been hatched here. And so everything that's above that yellow line could be administratively approved by staff. So our request is only considering the area below that yellow line in the hatched area, which is approximately 28 square feet. Staff did conduct a site visit, and the following determinations have been made according to this particular property, and this is all in accordance with the approval criteria outlined. The variance approval criteria, beginning with criteria A, that there may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this property, and that's due to the movement of the OCR critical line over time and the existing non-conforming status of the current structure on the site. This site was constructed in 1983 per Charleston County records. The applicant has stated in their letter of intent that the OCRM critical line migrated what appears to be nearly 50 feet towards the property over a 30-year period. The second criteria, which is approval criteria B, these conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. Subject property is located in the R2O residential overlay. As noted, adjacent properties also fall under that same zoning district within the Inlet Cove neighborhood. And the subject property is adjacent to a marsh at the south. Across Beachwalker property is Beachwalker property is zone R3/C, residential/commercial, and existing structures in the vicinity may or may not have similar encroachments. The applicant has stated in their letter of intent that other properties on Bellmead Hall are set several feet further back from the marsh, while the OCRM is known to migrate. A migration of over 50 feet within a 30-year period is not something one would expect to be normal occurrence. Criteria C, the application of this ordinance to 96 Bellmead Hall. This would prohibit the construction of the proposed deck addition, as the existing structure as well as what's being proposed does encroach into that required 10-foot rear setback. As stated, the proposed structure does extend beyond the 5 feet allowance administratively that could be done by the ordinance. However, this does not unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The applicant has stated in their letter of intent that these conditions would restrict our ability to add a small uncovered portion to our property. Looking at criteria D, the authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties or the public good. The proposed structure does encroach less than the approved encroachment that is into the current rear setback. And the existing deck, the furthest extent of that structure of the subject property is approximately 11 feet, 6 inches away from the rear property line and approximately 6 inches away from the OCRM critical line, which was surveyed March 25th, 2023. This proposed deck is approximately 18 feet, 6 inches away from the rear property line and approximately less than 6 inches away from the OCRM critical line at its closest point. And the current structure is currently encroaching the rear setback approximately 127 square feet, whereas the proposed structure would encroach approximately 28 square feet beyond the administrative relief. The applicant has stated in their materials that there will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties of the public good. The character of the zoning district would not be harmed should the BZA grant this variance, and the proposed uncovered porch will remain in line with the current rear side of the cottage and will not encroach further upon properties on either side. The rear of the property abuts the marsh. Looking at criteria E, the granting of this variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted, extend the zoning boundaries, change the zoning boundaries, or extend the physically and non-conforming use of land. The applicant has stated in their materials that the alterations proposed while requiring a variance do several things to this property and if approved would not establish a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, extend physically non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries on the zoning map. Criteria F, when it comes to profitability, BZA may not consider profitability in considering this request, and the applicant has stated in their materials that we are not requesting this variance as a means for profit. We purchased this home to be our future retirement property, and we do not anticipate that it would increase the profitability in any way. And while adding a small uncovered porch would increase our enjoyment of the property, it is not adding a significant space to the property. Criteria G, the need for the variance may be the result of the applicant's own actions. The existing structure is legally non-conforming, and this is with regards to the setbacks. The applicant has stated, we did not construct the home or cause the OCRM critical line to migrate. And then criteria H, which outlines, is this contrary to the public or neighborhood interest? It may be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, may not adversely affect other properties fitting nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, and intent or the purpose of the regulations. The encroachment of the addition is less than the existing encroachment at the rear of the home. Per the applicant's letter of intent as described in section D, the alterations proposed while requiring a variance, it would improve our property, and if approved, would not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, will not adversely affect the other property in the vicinity, and would not interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, and purposes of the regulations. In fact, many existing cottages have this exact improvement already, so this would be in the spirit of the neighborhood. The final criteria is criteria I. The variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of the ordinance. The applicant's proposed plans, as well as the existing encroachment into that required rear setback exists, and the overall encroachment is increased in square footage. However, the distance into the setback and distance from the rear property line is approximately the same. For the applicant's letter of intent, as stated before, looking at criteria D, the alterations proposed while requiring that variance, it does several things to improve the existing non-conforming property, and if approved, would not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of the zoning ordinance. Based on that, the appeals action for the BZA, as reminded, the BZA can approve with conditions, or deny. And prior to continued review that, I do want to outline that several public letters were received regarding this particular application. As part of your materials received, I did highlight these were an overlay of the zoning map showing the 500-foot radius for that, where the public comments received represent the red dots on this particular map. Just a point of clarification, you may see some outside of that circle. Doesn't mean that those comments were not inside the radiuses. If that red line touches a portion of that property, that was part of the 500-foot radius for the notification requirements. So with that, that concludes my staff review for this subject property.
Thank you, John. Questions from the board for John? Hearing none, I'll call on the applicant. I believe it's Mr. Leckler.
I'd just like to read a letter. The homeowners, actually, they are out of the country, and she sent that to me just to kind of read this to the board.
To whom it may concern, we are writing as the owners of 96 Belmead Hall. As you know, we have applied for a variance in order to add a small uncovered porch, as have many Inlet Cove neighbors, including next door to us. This would allow symmetry outside the home and an additional small porch of the existing structure. This porch will have minimal impact to the surrounding wildlife and marsh behind our home. We deeply value the wildlife on Kiowa. It is one of the reasons that we purchased on the island in the first place. We love nature and we envision many happy hours spent sitting outside and watching the birds, the kayakers on the river, and listening to the sounds of insects and other creatures that live behind our home. We respect the environmental safeguards put in place to avoid building too close to the marsh. That being said, we do not feel that this 28 square feet of elevated uncovered decking will have detrimental effect in any way on the surrounding wildlife. We will continue to be very respectful of the surrounding environment, and our renovation will include updates inside and out on the home that will improve our cottage's efficiency and hopefully will result in a smaller environment impact overall. We know that there have been several variances granted already in the Inlet Cove to enable staircases on the sides of cottages and significant additions to cottages themselves. The precedents in this regard had already been set. We wish we could be there here in person to meet you and plead our case, but several family conflicts arose on this particular day. Thank you very much in advance for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Amy and Bright Hyatt, 96 Belmead Hall.
Mr. Leckler, are you prepared to answer questions about the
Yes, sir.
application?
Yeah.
Questions from the board?
When they purchased this house, did they not know there were requirements? Did they not do due diligence at that time? That there's a homeowners association and rules and OCRM, critical lines and everything?
I'm sure that they were aware of that, but I'm not sure how far they got into that.
Now they're just saying it doesn't matter anymore.
I can't answer that question.
I'd make a similar point. I mean, yes, the critical line moved however many yards it moved over 30 years, but there's a reason for that critical line. And there's a reason we don't permit development inside that line.
And Frank, it didn't move all in the last year. It moved over 30 years, so it's a continuing
Right,
process.
and they
it's
acquired
going to
this
continue to
property in
move.
2022.
And, 5 years from now, it's going to be even closer.
Correct.
And the house is already out of,
That's what I thought when I saw.
accordance with the rules. And I think to exacerbate it would be a gross mistake.
Other questions? Yeah, Ben.
When I visited the property, I saw the decking that's there presently that extends out, and it looks like the decking's in the middle of the marsh. Because the marsh vegetation was growing up between the slants and the decking. And that's how serious I think they seem to venture out into it. And I see nothing here that justifies criteria A and criteria B, which are probably two most serious criteria in the request for exceptions. Other than, geez, it's moved a lot in 30 years. 30 years ago we could have done it. And that's not the explanation, as my colleague just said. That's to be expected. You're living on an island here. And when you bought the property, it should be known. I have another question. Is the owner going to rent the property?
They are having on a rental program, yes, sir.
It already is rented.
There were renters there on
There were
Saturday
renters there
when I
on
was there.
Saturday.
Yeah. So in a sense, this is trying to enhance the value of the property, which is another turn down.
Frank?
Other questions? Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, if the variance were not granted, would they be able to build a portion of a porch there that is in conformity?
They could build a portion without, from the town being allowed within the setback lines, but it would be really oddly shaped and almost unusable.
Anything else? Okay, who wants to speak from the public on this matter? Yes, sir, you have your hand up first.
I just have some brief prepared comments. My name is Eugene Babnick. I'm the property owner at 97 Belmead Hall, adjacent to 96, so we are the most impacted by this. I'm a resident of the town of Kiowa. I want to express my appreciation to the board and John Taylor first for allowing this opportunity to present today, so thank you all. Improvements, regardless of how small its properties, should not be the detriment of the marsh, a neighborhood, or existing property owners. When we purchased our property in 2018, we were well aware of the rules and regulations of the town and the various agencies regarding what we could do and what we can't do to our property. In the case of setbacks that we're talking about today, the rules protect nature from our desire to develop our properties. The setbacks we're discussing here are one of the most sensitive, the one required for the OCRM critical line. As you've noted on the board here, the applicant's justification is that the critical line has moved over 50 feet over a 30-year period. How it's moved over that 30-year period is not relevant to the application. We need to address where it is currently. Others in our community, and they've written letters, have accounted for the current critical line when they've made their improvements. Inlet Cove is a community of 108 cottages. I went on the GIS, Charleston GIS website. 61 of those cottages, over half, have some type of water frontage, water features. They're either on the river, the marsh, or an inlet. So over half our cottages within our community are impacted by this. Some of the letters that have been submitted detail the extent that other fellow owners have gone through to improve their properties, but keeping in harmony with nature in doing so, keeping in guidelines within the town of Kiowa, ARB, and our own community. Granting this variance would have a terrible consequence to our community, personally, as well as to flooding that happens between 96 and 97. When the marsh swells, our owner's closet floods. This will do nothing to contain that. Others have noted that as well in their letters. Finally, the town recognizes the importance of marshes and has recently published the Comprehensive Marsh Management Plan. We need to stand behind our words today, protect the marsh and to protect the marsh by denying this application and requiring the full setback from the critical line. So those are my comments. I want to thank others that have supported me in this. It's something we take very seriously. I'm here for any questions that you folks have.
Thank you, Mr. Babinek. Any questions for him? Anyone else wish to
Thank you.
speak on this? Seeing none, I'd ask if anyone would care to make a motion with regard to this.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the request. I think not only the information provided about existing violation and exacerbating it, and the number of supplemental letters from members of the community who are all against it. I think when you move into a neighborhood, and this is something I addressed at the previous meeting, and the neighborhood has certain regulations, you buy in knowing the regulations, and you have to learn to adhere to them. You should not feel that once you move in, you can do what you want. So I vote no. I make a motion that it be denied.
Any further discussion? Okay, a yay vote means we deny. Let me just make that clear, because that's the form that Larry's motion took. So, Lynn, how do you vote?
Yay.
Yes?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Phil? Morris?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Okay, it's unanimous. This request for variance is denied. And we thank you for your time. No further comments. I'll move on to the next case, which is BZA 23000010 at 31 Marsh Cottage Lane. And I'd ask John to provide us with his report.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Our second case BZA 23-000010. This is a variance request for the reduction of the required 30-foot rear setback and 15-foot side setback. And this is for approximately 180 square feet deck addition pool. Subject property is 31 Marsh Cottage, TMS number 265-0900014. Subject property is zoned in our R1 residential zoning district and is approximately 18,166 square feet in size. The property owner and applicant, Christy and Frederick Farber, is being represented by Carter Ricks. This particular property, as noted, was zoned in R2 zoning district. There's a front setback of 25 feet, a side setback along Governors, which is 40 feet, and a rear setback of 30 feet, and also a 15-foot side setback adjacent to Lot 30. Subject property is outlined to 33% max lot coverage. Here's that zoning map showing you R2 zoning destination. Across the street of Governors is R1 residential zoning district, and all the properties to the north or northeast are zoned R2 as well. The subject property is legally non-conforming with regards to the setbacks. This was constructed in 1995 and acquired by the applicants in 2021. Property does sit adjacent to the marsh to the south. Here, aerial aerial of the subject property adjacent to Governors, as you can see, to this southwest. To the northeast is adjacent R2 properties. Just to the southeast there is the marsh. Few images of the site is noted. The applicant's proposed plan includes the rear of the property, which includes a deck and pool addition. Here the applicant's proposed existing structure, showing the existing location of the deck. Central 30 2-inch live oak at the center of the rear. Proposed plans of the existing deck be removed. And the proposed features here of the modified deck and pool addition with the preservation of the 32-inch live oak at the center there. Staff will now go and do a review of the findings based upon the staff visit. There may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the property, and that's due to the size and location of the existing mature trees on the site, the proximity to critical area at the rear of the site, and the double frontage of the subject property that's adjacent to Marsh Cottage as well as Governors, which includes a 40-foot setback off of Governors Drive. This subject property also contains several mature trees, including live oaks at the rear of the property. And there's a 31-inch live oak at the rear of the existing deck. And the applicant has stated in their materials that there's a grand oak of 31 inches at the rear, which creates an extraordinary condition that has guided the design and the location of this raised pool and deck. And the design and constructability of the proposed design is in direct response to its natural and irreplaceable element. When it comes to criteria B, the conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The subject property is located within an R2 residential zoning district and is legally non-conforming. With regards to setbacks, the adjacent properties to the northeast and west are also located in that R2 zoning district, and the adjacent properties across Governors is located in the R1 residential zoning district. This subject property is adjacent to critical area to the south and existing structures that may have or may not have similar encroachments based on the current setback standards. The applicant has outlined within their letter of intent that the existence of a grand live oak so close to the main residence and exterior living space is a unique condition that does not apply to other properties. Looking at criteria C, the application of the ordinance to this property, 31 Marsh Cottage Lane, this would prohibit the construction of the proposed deck and pool addition, as the structure does encroach into that required 15-foot side setback as well as that required 30-foot rear setback. However, it does not unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And the applicant has stated in their materials that due to the location of the grand oak in the center of the rear yard, it impacts the ability for owners to utilize the backyard and exterior living space. Given the detailed arborist report, which details the nature and the habitat of the tree, the design, and the construction of the proposed plan responds to these unique conditions. The root plate of the grand live oak will remain undisturbed, and as a structural floating beam will allow for minimal invasion on the root zone. The areas impacted by the construction will be hand dug to ensure viability and the location of the underground root system. Looking at criteria D, the authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties of the public good. A portion of the existing single-family resident encroaches into the required side setbacks. That subject property is legally non-conforming with regards to setbacks, which the existing structure does encroach into. And then the proposed pool and the deck suggest that the encroachment of 180 square feet is 31.3% lot coverage. The applicant has stated in their materials that neighboring properties will not be affected by the granting of this variance. Preserving the tree and creating a plan to work around it maintains the character of the district. 31 Marsh Cottage Lane is located on the corner lot, and the property backs up to the marsh. Working in coordination with the Key Island Architectural Review Board, a planting plan has been developed to ensure proper screening on two sides of the property. This ensures that the exterior movement in the exterior improvements will not be visible to the public realm. The requested variance is only for 180 square feet, with portions of that being for a cantilever trough that functions as part of the infinity edge. Looking at criteria E, the granting of this variance would not allow the establishment of the use not otherwise permitted in this zoning district, extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or extend the zoning district boundaries. The applicant has stated in their materials this proposed plan will not be in conflict with the above statement that they're seeking a 180 square foot encroachment for a raised pool and deck. And criteria F, which outlines the BZA may not consider profitability when considering this request. The applicant has stated that the desire of the homeowner is to make the rear exterior living space of property more usable and functional for the needs and desires of the homeowner. Profitability is not a factor in the request of this variance. Criteria G, the need of the variance may be the result of the applicant's own actions. The existing structure is legally non-conforming with regards to the setbacks. And the applicant has stated in their letter of intent the presence and location of a naturally occurring and irreplaceable grand 31-inch live oak is the reason for the variance request. Criteria H, the variance of this, the granting of the variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, may not adversely affect the other property in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, or purposes of the regulations. And the applicant has stated, again in their materials, the pool and deck will cause no adverse impact to the neighbors, no adverse effects to neighbors or neighboring properties. A well-developed landscape plan with predominantly native plant material to renaturalize the marshfront property has been proposed to ensure proper screening of the pool and deck from the public realm. The final criteria, which is I, granting of the variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purpose of this ordinance. The applicant's proposed plans does meet the lot coverage requirements. The applicant also designed the proposed addition to include a unique structural system for the pool to preserve the substantial live oak with consultation from a certified arborist to protect the health of the tree. And per the applicant's letter of intent, the variance will not conflict with the comprehensive plan and will allow for the owner to utilize the exterior living space at the rear of the residence while preserving that grand live oak tree. As noted, the BZA regarding their appeals action can approve with conditions, or deny the application. In this particular request for that 30-foot rear setback and 15-foot side setback, do want to show you that this is the received landscape plan as part of that application, as well as sort of a mock-up of what the structural intent is behind the pool. If there were any question, that concludes staff review.
Thank you, John. Questions for John? Hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Ricks, is it?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? My name is Taylor Femmel. I'm the landscape architect for this project, part of Remark Studio. We're in downtown Charleston. Mr. Frederick Farber is also here as well. He may choose to speak after me, but I would like to just reiterate some of the kind of talking points that John Taylor already went through. So we are asking specifically for this variance request to protect the integrity of the 32-inch live oak that's centered on the back rear deck, pretty much in that back living space. This live oak is an irreplaceable, naturally occurring, unique element to the site. And I know you all did a site visit already, but I'm trying to find a good picture of the tree itself. You can see right here, kind of the mass of the trunk itself, but it's a beautiful tree. We are requesting 180 square feet total. I'd like to break down what that square footage is actually come out to. 17 square feet of it is decking, 50 square feet of it is pool and coping, and the other 113 square feet is a cantilevered edge for the infinity edge, which will have actually no ground disturbance. So it'll be elevated and act much like a roof structure. As you can see, and was already reiterated by Mr. Taylor, is we have put together as well an extensive planting plan that'll be screening the proposed improvements from the public realm as well as the neighboring properties. I'd also like to reiterate that we are proposing the new improvements are 31.3% of coverage allowable for the site, which is below the maximum 33% coverage allowed. Also would like to kind of touch upon, there's been a lengthy design process regarding constructability, construction means and methods in order to preserve and guarantee the integrity of the tree. We've engaged myself, landscape architects, arborists, engineers, and put forth ultimately the request is to preserve this tree. And finally, we've received support from the Kiowa ARB for the proposed improvements. So we've already corresponded with them as well and have come to this plan, which takes in consideration floating beams and really preservation of the root plate of the tree. Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
When I walked the back of the property, I think it's probably the furthest edge, the furthest tip of the edge of the pool, the closest one to the lines.
To the neighboring, the plan north?
Sorry, yes, right.
I don't know, I can
Right
use
up
the little
here,
pointer.
this very edge one. And
Which
when
one
I-
is it? Sorry, I'm gonna try my best here. Right here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So when I walked that property, my only concern with that was it looked like that area where that part of the pool was gonna go was already very wet.
Okay.
My question is more the integrity of the pool, if you have a
Yes.
water issue there, because you are by a lagoon and you do get some water. I just want to verify that it had all been taken into consideration with the building of this, because it was pretty wet.
Absolutely, and we have taken that into consideration, but we're also in the process of engaging with a geotech. So they will be drilling the site to make sure that all of our proposed construction means and methods are accurate and the pool can actually withstand, I'm not an engineer, I apologize, withstand how it's being constructed,
Okay,
if that answers your question.
it does.
Okay.
What I'm missing here, I understand the preservation of the tree.
Absolutely.
I'm missing why the preservation of the tree dictates this specific design for this pretty massive deck and pool configuration, such that it needs to require a variance.
Sure. If I could speak a little to, from a design process standpoint, which from a submittal standpoint, we wanted to only ultimately submit what we are proposing. But from an iteration standpoint, we looked at this side from looking at installing the pool on this side, but we felt that it was more of a detriment to this public realm area. We also have a very tight setback on this side, so we really can't propose the pool on this side. Secondly, it's really hard. This side of the tree holds the mass of the root plate, which is detailed in the arborist report. I think that was the last document that you have, that a majority of the tree mass is on this side, which prohibits us, if we wanted to preserve the integrity of the tree, proposing any significant structural members besides the, I'm going to say, thought through process of these posts for the deck, the beams. So we're going to be working with the general contractor directly and hand excavating this with the approval, obviously, of this variance request, to make sure the integrity of those tree roots are not disturbed. That really dictated this particular location rather than the plan south for the pool itself. And other things that we considered when coordinating with the ARB as well is its relationship to the main house as well from an architectural and design standpoint. So we really tried to mass, proportion, and scale to make a really cohesive project, if that answered your question from why it was placed where it is.
That's helpful, thank you. Other questions? Yeah,
Two questions.
Ben.
So a little bit.
Go ahead.
It's a little bit follow-up on that question, that being that you seem to have gone to great lengths to satisfy, or at least to address some of the concerns of the ARB, but you've done nothing to address our concerns. And that being that you already have over 600 square feet of legally non-conforming space, and you've made no effort to reduce that in order to accommodate a huge deck and another pool.
Okay.
So I'm just interested, it doesn't appear that you've made any effort to reduce that footprint from decking and pool.
I would disagree from a perspective of that there's already an existing deck here, and that we're merely replacing, I would go as far as to say that we're replacing the deck boards in this area. The main view of this portion of this house and living space is outside and on the deck. And while I understand that we're asking for the variance to preserve the tree, I feel that we've taken every effort, and from a due diligence point as well as a variance perspective, to place it appropriately to meet the criteria, if that, I'm sorry.
I don't know, I'm sorry, can I just go back to, his statement was, when you talked about this large decking was already there, and,
Yeah.
and it's not, if you look at this picture, it's nowhere near the tree. So you're adding on a whole bunch of decking that's already not there, but you're saying it is there. Am I confused?
No, and I should reiterate, I apologize. So the deck currently comes down, it's more of a square, and there's a staircase. Oh, here, let me just go back to the existing conditions, that'll be. So there is a staircase already right here. It's about, I would say, 3 to 4 feet from the trunk of the tree currently. Expanding the deck from an elevated perspective around the tree, I think if anything would preserve it more, that there's less foot traffic around the base of the tree. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to preserve the tree, highlight the tree, and I mean, hope that answers your question. If I'm,
Is this property rental property? by the
to
way?
my knowledge, it is not, but Mr. Farber's here, he may be able to better
And
answer
since
that.
they're building it for their own usage,
Yes.
why not just, I'll use the word, it's incorrect, but recess the pool into some of the existing deck and not require any overage to the line? There is sufficient room there
Then we
to
wouldn't.
make a sufficiently large pool, I would say.
We wouldn't be able to walk around the pool from an egress standpoint. So from a safety perspective, we would still have to be able to enter and exit the pool. So even if we pushed it closer, that would really limit the
What's the
use of it.
What's the requirement of width to walk around the pool?
It would be a minimum of 4 to 5 feet. I'd have to double check the building code.
Does it have to be full circumference, or does it, how many sides of the pool has to be?
I would have to check the building code to confirm.
Because if you're building an infinity
Mm-hmm.
edge, no one's gonna walk out on the infinity edge.
Understood.
So therefore, one side of the pool and the infinity edge is along of the rectangle, correct? Not a short part of the rectangle.
Correct.
Correct.
Therefore, your 1/4, well,
Mm-hmm.
more than a quarter, possibly 35% of the pool already has no area, no access out of it. So I don't see that as a valid excuse.
Okay.
I see no reason to recess the pool or relocate it
back?
closer to the house.
Okay.
How many feet is there existing now between the house and the edge of the pool?
I can't see that. Hold on one second. We're proposing from this corner to the edge of the pool is currently 12 feet. If we
So it could be reduced to, say, 4.
possibly, yes.
So then I'm asking, before you go into a speech,
Mm-hmm.
if you move the pool 8 feet closer, does it still intrude into the area that it's not supposed to?
It would interfere with the root plate of the tree if we pushed it any closer to the house.
How would it interfere with the tree if you move it further away from the tree?
We wouldn't be moving it further away from the tree. We'd be moving it, if I'm understanding it correctly, we'd be moving it closer to the house, which is closer to this trunk of the tree.
You could make it smaller, the pool smaller, and then move it further from the tree.
Okay.
True.
Okay.
I just think this is overkill.
Other questions, comments?
I'm sorry.
Backyard, it looks extremely low to me.
Okay.
I mean, there's trees laying over with roots exposed that have been washed out, evidently from high tide or something. And also, there's a drain that comes right to the corner of the pool. Is that draining from the road?
It is owned by the town of Kiowa, and it's just, oh, excuse me, let me clarify. Are you talking about the one from this one that goes under the bridge?
I'm talking about the one that's on the,
Up
runs
here?
down the lot line, between the lot line on the right side there.
Understood. It is,
Right at the, and it comes out right at the corner of where the proposed pool is.
it's owned by the town of Kiowa. As far as what capacity or size it handles, I'm not entirely sure. That being said, the multiple times I've been there, it has not been extremely wet. We have had some heavy rains, but again, we're we are looking to get that geotech report to make sure the soils conditions are accurate, that we are taking into consideration, you know, consistent percolation rates, drainage, things to that effect.
Wouldn't it behoove you to do that before you design the pool? Find out what part of the ground is buildable for a pool and what part is not?
My understanding is the entire, thus far, from a constructability, structural engineers, the arborist, this whole area is constructible. We are doing additional due diligence to get that geotech report as
All I know
well.
is I walked the property, when I came back, my socks were wet.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, question, maybe this for John. Are there any restrictions on backfilling that area? I mean, are they restricted from trying to elevate the low area there? There's a little peninsula that sticks out that has a couple palm trees on it that's high ground, but all around it and up to almost the house, it's all low, and I'm a little concerned that they try to.
That would be a question for the
Sure,
build,
that's like dumping-
for our building department. That would be a question for our building department. I can't give an exact detail of whether or not it will require fill. Is it, your question to, is there a requirement to fill that area?
Is it permitted to put fill within that area that's either partly in or right in the
I mean, we have had homes where site grading occurs for any project development. It just would depend on the elevations of the area or how much grade could be adjusted.
Can I clarify that we will not be changing the grade? We'll be, as proposed, we'd be driving piles and building up from that. So to decrease the amount of disturbance as the least amount as possible. So we won't be changing any of the elevations. The areas in behind the proposed towards the OCRM side will remain as they are naturally occurring, which is wet, which is why we are proposing native plant material that can handle that wetland inundation infrequent or as frequent as it is.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
So I'm the homeowner and I'm a civil engineer myself.
Hold on,
Yep.
let's finish.
And identify yourself.
Yes, sir. My name's Fred Farber. My wife and I, Christy, have been vacationing in Kiowa since 1986, and we were lucky enough to purchase a house from the owner that we rented from for 15 years. We have no intent on renting the house out. It's for our forever home. And knowing that this tree was so pretty, and we wanted to come up with a way to design a pool that made sense back there. We worked with the arborist to figure out where the root plate was, where the tree was located, and where the central roots were, and what kind of foundation system we could use. Knowing that it was a sand, wet material back there, I hired Powell Engineering to review the foundation design, and they came up with a helical pile design. So the soil on the surface really isn't a worry when you have a helical pile design, because you're driving anywhere from 20 to 50 feet. And there's 15 of those piles that go down into the ground to support the wall system. We looked at like Taylor said, we've looked at various ways to try to fit this pool in. And as to your point, if we move it any closer to the house, we get into the root plate of the tree. And part of the ARB's comments initially were, you need to push that thing a little bit further away from the tree. So that's why we ended up with the footprint. And I was ultimately concerned about the foundation, so we went through hiring a structural engineer now to give us a foundation design that elevated the foundation above the root system. And then I pulled the plug to get the geotechnical out there, to get the drilling done, to determine the exact extent, depth of those piles, so we could be assured that the foundation was proper. So those are the only 2 points I wanted to bring up.
But it doesn't answer the question about the size of the pool. We're concerned about the tree, we understand. We understand your desire and your protection taken. We commend that. However, you may not be able to have both, that pool that size and the tree that size. So what have you done, or what could you do to make that pool smaller and move it back within the setbacks?
To have, it's a 12 by 25 pool right now, and that edge is as far away from the tree as what the ARB required.
I know, I told you, I said smaller pool. Can you make a smaller pool?
Say a 10 by 20 instead of a 12 by 25.
Anything's possible. I'm, at the end of the day, to fit the spa and on that side, because we have a need for a spa, that was where we had to fit that. Because the ultimate utilization, the functionality of an actual pool, much smaller than that, is
I
tough.
understand that, but you got to consider this, what you have on your lot there. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't build a pool all the way out into the.
Understand. I completely understand, and I think going through the design of this cantilevered infinity edge was, and that being 113 square feet of the variance request, knowing that's not coming down to the ground, that I thought that helped in the ultimate design and impact in the overall 180 square foot variance request. We've done a lot. I mean, it's been 7 months, 6, 7 months that we've gone through probably 6 or 7 different iterations of design on this, trying to make it make sense and work with ARB to go through it. So it's been a long time.
Any other questions for
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Farber? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Tommy Emanuel, ARB Director. I just wanted to follow up on what the applicant was saying regarding the pool size. In our review of that, the board didn't see the pool size as being excessively large for things that come before us, and we felt like it was a reasonable request, and they were making extraordinary efforts to preserve the tree. We had concerns about pushing the pool in, not only from the impact to the tree, but also just in terms of functionality of the deck and the pool, not having that pool directly under the canopy. This moves it out. And at the end of the day, the board members felt like that the pool size was reasonable. It's not something that was excessive.
That's the ARB's priority.
I understand. I'm just sharing that information. Yeah.
And when you've got over 600 square feet already intruding into the marsh, I would think you would make some reasonable effort not to increase upon that, particularly when you have ability to make it smaller, both the decking and the pool, without increasing that the amount that you're encroaching.
Taylor?
Two things have been shared. The existing encroachment, thought there was an exhibit. Okay, it's not exhibit on this slide here. The existing encroachment is actually substantial modifications would need to occur, essentially the home, not necessarily the rear deck. So that 600 foot doesn't incorporate the deck. That's the structure, the principal home. I just wanted to clarify that.
But it's still
And then
totally
They
non-conforming.
got a lot that can accommodate certain things.
yeah, and so I just wanted to clarify that for the record. And then the other thing is that it was shared earlier, the town does not own that easement there. That's the community association, yeah, so I just wanted.
ARB doesn't seem to concern itself with non-conformance in this case. Am I correct? I'm sorry? I'm asking,
You're asking me, I'm sorry.
no. Does the ARB concern itself with the previous non-conformance of the house when it decides additional non-conformance?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So therefore, you have no limit to the amount of non-conformance in your decision. You just decided this is already extant, so we can let them extend now and non-conform, and you
We didn't-
approve it.
Those two things are, the board didn't see those things as directly connected, as that was, as John was pointing to the front of the house.
They're connected.
Correct.
They're built together.
If they were improving something around that area that would allow for us to, would allow for them to make those adjustments in a meaningful manner, a reasonable way, we certainly would ask them to do that.
I just don't see how the ARB can approve of increasing the amount of nonconformance of an existing nonconforming structure. I just don't understand your reasoning. That's all. I won't argue with you. I'm just stating, making a statement.
John, do you have the exhibit that we have? Because I believe that you reiterated that's a legal nonconformance. That document that we submitted, I think, went back to when the setbacks were created in relation to the year that the house was built.
I think as much as we're looking for this non-conforming legal statement, I think it's not just the concern of the non-conforming main part of the house, it's how far it goes out and the size and the scale of it. And I understand that Mr. Farber is a civil engineer and he's done all of this. I think what I wished would have happened was our socks weren't all wet when we went to go visit, because that heightened all of our concern, that maybe extra testing was done before you came in front of us today with possibly other options. I love the tree.
What is the concern with the wet soil?
My concern with the wet soil is that you're gonna get water overflow, and you know how when the water comes in, it swirls around, it just digs, and it can make a mess of foundations and all of that. My concern was just that, you know, as a pool, as a corner of a pool, and it's gonna be holding all of that weight, is it prepared for that? Because it was soggy, and before I got here, I said, you could tell it had been wet. I mean, we all live in Kiowa, there's all kinds of wet spots. And the last thing, I guess, you know, as a homeowner, I'm looking at it saying, man, I hate to have built that house and then have like that side cave in, because it's so wet, you know, I mean, it can, and if it's mushy on top, we know it's mushier underneath.
And if you,
From a structural standpoint, the last thing I would do is.
I have this on the record, so you can come to the mic, just to make sure.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I was,
The last thing I would want to do is spend this much effort, money, time to build a pool and then have it settle or fall down. I understand your concern of water swirling, but I would hope that with the landscape design and the overall grading, you know, the site plan would address water buildup. The backfill of the retaining wall will be with granular material, so if it gets water in it, it'll go through it. But be assured that the helical pile, or excuse me, the hybrid pile design, the pool, the wall would not move, will not move.
Is there any more information that we could have that would assure us that your concern is being dealt with, that would then help us with our decision?
Can I echo that from a planting perspective? If anything, we're adding back plant material, a substantial amount of marsh grass, spartina, native trees that will ultimately help with some of the erosion that's already taking place, some of the water percolation. I mean, that's how we address it in is with plant
I'm
material.
not disputing that.
Okay.
I live on a marsh. I know what it's like, and I can see by this, it's a beautiful landscaping project. I'm looking beyond that, and I'm looking at function and how close it is to that very wet area in comparison with the size. And that's where I was going with this question. I get what the planting does, I get what the care of the dirt does and all of that. My concern is placement of that corner and size.
And the size of the pool.
That's what I meant, size of the pool,
Yeah.
when I said size. Sorry.
That crosshatch area up there, that's the nonconformity.
On both sides.
That is correct. Excuse me.
That's beyond significant.
Yeah.
And to Mr. Taylor's point that we've discussed that prior to bringing the variance to you, that it is a legal nonconformity based on when the house was built and when the setbacks were officially incurred. John, do you need to say anything more to that?
From the record, I just wanted to make sure that that was shown, that the area that was mentioned earlier, that where the existing encroachment into the setback occurs. I just wanted to point that out of where that encroachment occurred.
But my concern is that the 660 feet, they're adding to it.
I don't, that's you guys' decision.
It's just that simple.
And my recollection, Ben, is we don't typically, in legally non-conforming situations, we don't typically approve making them bigger. We sometimes approve making them smaller.
Typically, we have homeowners who will know that they're, have some legally non-conforming, and they give back or they add, or when they add. I understand that can't be done here, John. You're saying it's the house. I understand the house. We're not asking you to do anything with the house. But I'm saying that you keep adding, want more, and it's not, and I think what you're heading it now is out into the marsh. And that backyard is so low now, it looks like it's been washed out several times over. And adding more in that direction, I think is kind of smart.
Other comments, questions? Anybody else going to speak to this one? All right, I'd entertain any motions that anyone would care to make.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make another motion to deny this request. I think it's too much in the wrong place.
Is there a second? Any further discussion?
I'd love to see us not deny it, but ask them to come back with a revised plan, if it's possible.
No,
Oh, they always have that ability.
I think they may do that.
Okay, they do that anyway? Okay, good. I'm sorry, John. I always ask the wrong thing.
If it was something that you wanted additional information for regarding this, I would suggest that you guys revise your motion opposed to having a new application come forth, if that was your concern there.
I guess that was what I was asking, was it, instead of denying it, can we make a motion to have them rework it and possibly make it smaller?
Oh, that would
And
be
do
a
the
new
geothermal, that's what I was talking about, instead
So
of,
if you're asking them to redesign the pool, then a new application would come forth. If you're asking for additional soil testing or something of that nature, that would be
okay,
something
so then it's a
different.
deny. Okay, my bad.
All right, we've got a motion moved and seconded to deny the request for the application. So a yay vote is to deny. Lynn?
I denied the application. Yay.
Jay?
Yes.
Ben? Yes. Phil?
No.
Morris? No. And Frank is Larry?
Yes.
And Frank is a yes. So the motion is denied by a vote of, or the variance request is denied via a vote of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 to 2. Thank you for your presentations. Should we take a short break here before we go to the next one, or you want to just keep going?
It's up to you. You call it. I'm fine either way.
All right, let's keep moving. The next case is BZA 23000012 at 38 Burroughs Hall. John?
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Our final case for today is BZA 23-000012. This is a variance request for the reduction of the required 30-foot rear yard setback and for 184 square feet of encroachment. And this is for a proposed pool, deck addition and pool. The subject property is 38 Burroughs Hall, TMS number 26402000060. Subject property is zoned in our R1 residential zoning district, approximately 9,800 square feet in size. Property owner and applicant Susan Sullivan and David Barrington, being represented by Jerry DeWitt. Here you can see outlined the maximum lot coverage for the subject property being at 40%. And the required setbacks to the rear, there's a 30-foot rear setback along the marsh, a 25-foot front setback, 15-foot side setbacks. The applicant's proposed plans does include a new single-family home residence, which does include a pool, and the proposed plan suggests that the encroachment of 184 square feet into the required rear and side setback, that proposed lot coverage is 38.2%. Here's that R1 zoning district. This is just located off of Governor's Burroughs Hall. As you can see to the north, property is adjacent to critical area at the rear. Aerial. Here are a few images of the site. Proposed site plan for the subject property, which shows the areas of encroachment. The applicant has also provided within their materials showing an area reduction of the critical area, areas in cross-hatching. And this is the areas of encroachment into the dark gray shaded areas of the areas in question regarding today's application. Upon that site visit, staff did conduct a site review in which the following determinations were made according to our approval criteria. When it comes to criteria A, there may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions, and this is pertaining to the movement of the critical line over multiple years since the original plat recording in 1979. The applicant has stated in their letter of intent that when the property was surveyed for the current owner in 2021, it was determined that the OSAM critical line had moved landward significantly, resulting in a loss of roughly 1,300 square foot of high ground, and being that the rear setback is distance from the critical line rather than the property line, we lost a tremendous amount of buildable area. There is criteria B. These conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The subject property has decreased in size by approximately 1,993 square feet, and this is due to the movement of the critical line. And it also lost approximately 1,207 square feet of buildable area since that last survey that was shared. And the subject property is noted zoned in an R1 residential zoning district, and adjacent properties to the south, east, and west are also located in that same zoning district, R1. It is adjacent to marsh to the north, and existing structures in the vicinity may or may not have similar encroachments, and that's based on what's being proposed to the current setback standards. Criteria C, application of this ordinance to 38 Burroughs Hall. This would prohibit the construction of the proposed structure. That because it encroaches into the required setbacks, that's a 30-foot rear setback and the 15-foot side setback. However, it does not unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And the authorization of the variance regarding criteria D may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property owners or the public good. The proposed pool and deck sits approximately 25 feet from the critical line and encroaches the rear setback by approximately 5 feet. And the proposed single-family residential residence will be 13 feet from the left side of the property, which encroaches the left side setback by approximately 2 feet. When you look at criteria E, the granting of the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in this zoning district, extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries. Criteria F, the BZA may not consider profitability when considering this request. Criteria G, regarding the applicant's own actions. This may be the result of the applicant's own actions. Property is currently undeveloped. This structure could be reconfigured to meet the current setback requirements. Looking at criteria H, the granting of the variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, may not adversely affect other property in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, and purpose of these regulations. The Architectural Review Board has approved the variance request, and they've stated, quote, the ARB is open to the front-facing garage doors given the shape of the lot. Please work with the landscape architect to reduce and refine the amount of paving and allow for larger planting areas between the home and street. The proposed variance to allow for portions of the rear deck and pool to encroach past the rear setback is approved, given the OCRM critical line movement into the site. Please study how massing proportions can be adjusted to better ground the home into the landscape. Revising the telescoping plan organization along the left side of the home may help to alleviate the appearance of tall proportions, improve the composition of the left elevation, and better integrate the pool bath into the design of the home. Please study the expression of the stair tower and roofing bracketing. Adjusting shingle placement at this element may be of benefit to aid in softening the vertical proportions. And please ensure the right-of-way aid in softening the vertical proportions. Please ensure the right-of-way grading information is sent to KICA, which is Community Association, and demonstrates that the stormwater conveyance within the Community Association easement will not be impeded. Criteria I, which is the final criteria, granting of the variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purposes of the ordinance. The applicant's proposed plan encroaches minimally approximately 5 feet into the rear setback adjacent to the OCRM critical line and approximately 2 feet into the left side setback. The Zoning Board of Appeals action, which again is to approve with conditions or deny based on the approval criteria that's been outlined. That concludes the staff review. Mr. Chairman, are there any questions?
Thank you, John. Questions for John?
The most recent survey of the critical line was 2021?
Correct.
Home was not purchased until 2022, after the survey, correct? The land was not purchased.
Correct.
Thank you. So they knew what was going on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jerry DeWitt on behalf of the owners. The property was actually purchased in 2020 and was surveyed in January of 2021. So it wasn't until after the survey was completed and the owners purchased the property.
Paperwork says they purchased it in 22. She purchased it in 22.
That might be an error.
I believe that's an error.
Okay.
They didn't contract with me until 2021.
All right, let's get back to John. Other questions for John at this point? All right, Mr. DeWitt, you're up.
Thank you.
You wanted to flip that.
Yeah, no, I think we're fine. Jerry DeWitt on behalf of Miss Sullivan and Mr. Barrington. They originally purchased the property with the intent to build their vacation home. Have no intention on renting it whatsoever. Love the location because of the setting and the marsh. Did not want to build a huge home, and specifically instructed me of that. And when they decided to purchase this lot, it was their understanding that they had basically a 12,000 square foot lot to build on. And once they purchased the lot, closed on the lot, and began the design process, they had the lot surveyed and had the critical line recertified, and obviously you see where it's been moved, which created a huge reduction. Well, I say huge, a significant reduction in buildable area. When we began the planning of the project, the home itself is just over 3,000 square feet, 3,100 square feet. And there's 650 square feet of pool decking and covered area on the back of the house. We submitted it initially to the ARB. I was a little bit, I'll be the first to say I was a little bit leery of pushing the envelope. However, the property was dry. Whenever we walked there, the encroachment of the marsh did not seem to be significant from that standpoint. But overall, the area that's encroaching on the current rear setback would be within the original rear setback had the critical line. And I understand. The critical line is natural, right? It moves, and it can go in, it can go out. I've worked on some properties that we've surveyed it, and the critical line actually moves outward. So we never know. However, this is what we were given. Our buildable area on the lot's only like 9,800 square feet. And I think we've done a very good job of keeping it within overall architectural aesthetics of the neighborhood, scale. We're not trying to overbuild the lot, and we're minimally encroaching what would potentially be the OCRM setback.
But is it not true that with sea levels rising, the critical line is predominantly going to be moving in towards the front of the property continuously?
I can't speak 100% on that. I know that there are properties.
I'm not talking 100%, I'm talking about predictably.
Predictably, I think it could go either way. I've seen plenty of properties where the critical line moves farther away based on currents. And honestly, I own a property that's happened.
I'm getting a sense of deja vu on these cases here.
I think John and I were saying the same thing.
I guess what I need help with here is, I understand why you need a variance to build this house. Why can't it be slightly smaller such that it does not require the variance?
Or pull it forward.
And a slightly
Yeah, I don't
smaller.
think you can pull it forward.
Pull it anymore.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have we don't have a site plan showing the existing footprint of the house and how it sits on the lot existing, but it
There
is
is one,
pulled.
I think, on the back
It is
page.
pulled all the way forward. It's pulled as far forward as it can go. And
There is
frankly,
Yeah, there is one,
the
right
street
here.
side of the lot, by the time you take into the setback and the side setbacks, is so narrow that we could, we had a hard time getting 2 garage doors, not 3, just 2. 2 garage doors and stairs going up to the front door.
other
Yes, sir.
thing I noticed on the property was you were out further towards the marsh than any of the surrounding homes.
Well, that's true. And if you look at an aerial of the property, you'll see that the way that the river comes in and the creek flows, this lot is almost on a point, and each lot falls away from it. And I think that's evident by the property survey.
I still don't see why the pool cannot be brought closer to the house. Sounds like a broken record here, but,
So currently, the pool is 7 feet away from the house,
7 feet away at one point, or
at
both
the
corners?
smallest point. Yeah.
Suppose you made a kidney-shaped pool. That would round the corners and you could move it in.
Potentially, that is, the pool is currently 10 by 20. It's not a large pool. It's large enough to get in, get wet.
Which is the size we were suggesting for the prior applicant.
Other questions?
I have some
Yeah.
comments. You have a clean slate here, okay? There's not a stick of grass, nothing's, no tree that's objecting in your way, there's nothing in your way except the setbacks. And you chose to, you did a nice job on recognizing the side setbacks, but you still said, I got what I want to build what I want to build, okay? So I'm gonna go out into the marsh and to do it. And I think that we see this frequently in that you may have underbought your lot and overbought your house. And so your house doesn't fit your lot. That's what I'm saying.
So,
You've got no restrictions on the lot per se right now, so I don't understand why you modify your house, accommodate the house and the pool if that's what you're gonna do.
Understood. However, I feel like we've done a really great job at balancing that by reducing the size of the pool to almost a minimum and reducing the size of the footprint. The building footprint itself is only 1,600 square feet. Correct.
That's what they've got to build on. I
A
mean,
lot, I mean, it's.
that's their ground.
Build a house, can't build every house on every lot, you know?
Oh, I understand. I think if you were to look at the house is not every house. It was designed respectfully for this property.
I understand it, and I commented that, I said that you've taken effort to make sure that the house with the side setbacks and the front setbacks is inside that.
It's
which
not
I
an
commend you for.
8,000 square foot home.
I'm sorry, sir.
I just said it's not an 8,000 square foot home, it's a 3,200 square foot home, but it could also be 2,800 square feet perhaps and move it back. There are these options rather than violate the rules that we have.
That's an option.
I mean, when Kiowa put in these setback rules, there was a reason. And I guess for many times, they were just let to go lax, but I don't understand the logic of it. If Kiowa wants to change the setbacks, let Kiowa change the laws on the setbacks. But I think it behooves us to live with the existing laws.
Understood. Tommy, quick question. Isn't there something in the ARB guidelines that states that decks, landings, and stairs, or deck landings and stairs can be side and rear setbacks by 5 feet? That's a town. That's a town? So I guess my question is, if that's the case, then why is it not permissible for a pool when it's basically taking up the same amount of square footage?
We didn't write that rule.
No, obviously,
It's a fair
no.
point, but we didn't.
You didn't,
Yeah.
but
We
we,
didn't.
you know, I mean, it's kind of where we're at.
I just don't understand the logic. You know, if they wanted to build a bigger house, they unfortunately would have had to buy a larger lot. And I still can't get over the fact that it says in the document, the house was purchased in 22 after the critical line. But even then, when
That
they
was a
purchased the
mistake, sir.
house, why not check the critical line at that time? So if they bought it in 20, they should have done a separate survey that would have found that the critical line was no longer out there, but was already encroaching on the property.
Understand.
Maybe they'd have purchased another lot. I mean, again, I use the term due diligence.
Due diligence, and I understand that all day long. However, I also know that it takes 10 to 12 weeks to get a survey, and most people.
I'm sorry,
10 to 12 weeks of
I'm not
due
sure I
diligence.
understood that question. Is the question that they should have done their own critical line survey between 2020 and 2021?
If they did not buy it, if they.
If they
were
bought it in
buying the
2020.
house, I cannot understand why the term critical line did not come up in their studying of the lot they were purchasing.
It was under contract.
Every one of us did, title searches and everything else when we purchased our homes here. And we researched everything that we could find that would in any way affect the lot. I happened to purchase a house that was already built, but I checked everything from the building codes and everything else in my house. And I'm not the most brilliant light on the tree, so to speak. I would think if they bought a lot that they wanted to build a beautiful house on, they would have researched any and all things that might be an impediment to building the full width of the lot, the full area of the lot, the setbacks of the lot, the water table of the lot, as in the previous case. I mean, everything, and this,
But it sounds as if they did, and then,
it just upsets me that they didn't do this at the time of the purchase. I don't
John?
understand it.
I just want to clarify again on the question of the acquisition of the lot, just clarifying the property owner's current David Barrington Scott Revocable Living Trust, which is the current property owner. That was 2022. Prior to that, Suzanne Sullivan's property owner acquired in 2021. So it's just exchanged within the same family dynamics. I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Thank you.
Sir, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, sure, thank you. I'm John Goldfarb. I'm actually the builder for this property. We build a lot of homes on Kiowa. Just want to interject on that. One, these guys did a great job articulating the back of the house and trying to accommodate the way that lot is shaped. We see lots of houses, just like everyone else here does, but they, oh, sorry if you can't hear me. Just saying that I think they, given the shape of the lot, they did actually really take into effect the shape of the lot and tried to articulate the rear of the home to make it fit. And then secondarily, as far as due diligence goes, OCRM lines change actually quite quickly. It's usually based on the type of vegetation that occurs. And so to say that, one day it's X and the next day it's Y, it is a pretty quick change. So I don't know that, you can impose upon these folks. They bought the lot with the expectation that they had a certain amount of land to build on. I mean, that was their expectation. They paid for a certain amount of upland, and they're within that basis. And at some point, could have been a month, a year, whatever that space was, some plants decided to grow a little bit further in, about 5 feet. And that's, that's not they didn't create those conditions, obviously. But to say that they should be doing an ongoing assessment, which is essentially what we're talking about, to know when the critical line may or may not be changing is not a fair condition, I don't think, to impose upon someone. When they bought, they went and did a critical line to re-up it, to renew it, and then they found out about it, but they already had paid. We say, oh, they should have bought a bigger lot. Well, they bought a lot that fit this home. And again, these guys did a fantastic job trying to articulate that home in the rear. It's not just a, 50-foot wall of house across the rear. This house, if you look at the rear, has some serious articulation to it. And I think, given the expectation that these folks had of the dirt they purchased, I think they did a really nice job of trying to accommodate that. And I think we need to take that into consideration, that what they bought is not, they didn't buy it and not do due diligence and find out later. They bought it and found out that it had moved under their own purchase. And I think there's a significant difference there. So, thank you.
Other questions? Motions from the board?
I move that we approve.
I'll second that. So in this case, an aye is to approve the variance, and a nay is to turn it down. Any further discussion? Okay, Lynn?
Oh, sorry. I approve the variance.
Jay?
Nay.
Ben? Phil?
Yes.
Morris? Larry?
No.
And Frank is yes. 1, 2, 3, that's 4-3 for approval. So the variance is approved on the basis that this is minimal intrusion into the setback. John, any further business before we adjourn? Do we know whether there will be a September meeting?
Yes.
There will be?
Yes.
Okay.
Any idea what's on it?
More OCRM cases.
I'm gonna guess some variance.
Can I just say something to this last one, the Burroughs Hall house? Who marked that lot with the pool and the deck and all the different colors? It was the most fun lot to walk.
Very well done.
It was so well done. I just really want to applaud you for it because it really allowed you to visualize in the different, I just wanted to say thank you because for someone as visual as me, it was wonderful.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Just so y'all know, just because it's something that I've been involved with the critical lines moving, it's a point of contention, but I think it's widely recognized that when a critical line is shot and approved by DHEC, that stamp says it's good for 5 years. And now there's some debate as to whether that can be moved within that 5-year period. And, you know, a court's going to decide that someday, but I think it's generally recognized that they're good for 5 years.
Thank you.
And after 5 years, you're gonna have to reshoot it.
That's important. Thank you.
So are you saying that the OCRM line, when they originally bought the house in 2021, DHEC would have approved that for 5 years? Is that what I just want to make sure I understand.
I don't know when there are 2 critical lines on
Right.
this
Yeah.
survey.
And you don't know
And
what.
it doesn't say when the earlier one was, but I assume it's more than 5
More than
years
5 years.
before
Okay.
2021.
They're probably doing more of it nowadays than they did 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, probably so.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.